What's happening with your Ohio home value right now? I just finished analyzing the latest Zillow data, and I found several counties in the state where home prices are actually starting to decline. In some of these markets, price drops are accelerating. In other counties, the very first cracks are forming. And then there are counties where prices are defying logic and continuing to climb. Either way, the market in Ohio is changing and changing fast. I'm the Ohio Housing Nerd, and on today's video, we're breaking down what you need to know about the Ohio housing market if you're a buyer, seller, investor, or just curious. To help us understand what's happening, I built two maps using Zillow and Realtor.com data, and the links for these maps are in the description below. Now let's start with Franklin County. You can see that year over year price growth is slowing, now only up 1%. And if I go back 2 years, home prices in the county are only up 6%. In other words, if you purchased a home 3 years ago in Franklin County, on average, your home value's up about 8%. But what I really want you to pay attention to is year 4 and year 5. Year 4 home values in Franklin County were up 23%. Year 5, they were up 44%. That means from year 5 to year 4, basically 2020 to 2021, right in the heart of COVID, home values in Franklin County went up nearly 20% in that 1 year. So the fact that they're only up 1% right now, year over year, is a huge difference. And it could mean an advantage for the buyers out there. The second map we're going to use is all about inventory. So the first map was prices, this map, inventory. Because the number of homes for sale will drive the price growth. A lot of homes on the market, lower prices. Low number of homes on the market, higher prices. Just supply and demand. And if you're a buyer in Franklin County, pay attention to this because there are 31% more homes for sale right now in Franklin County versus last year. That's a big difference. But look at the 2-year change, 83%. The point is there are a lot more options for buyers to choose from on the market right now versus the last few years. I mean, inventory has exploded in Franklin County, and that's contributing to the fact that homes are sitting longer and prices are starting to actually cool because sellers have to keep reducing their price in order to actually sell the house. This is not COVID anymore. The sellers have been winning for the last several years. Now it may be the buyer's turn. But let me know, if you live in Franklin County, are you seeing more homes on the market? I know I am as a realtor. Now, if I go to the east where the Intel project is being built, Licking County, we're seeing a similar trend. 1 year price change just up 1%. 2-year change up 5%. 3-year change up 10%. Look at the 6-year change up 60%. So if you think about it, rough math tells me that in 6 years, home prices have gone up 60% or about 10% per year. So again, to only be up 1% year over year tells me that sellers are discounting their properties because they know there's more inventory out there. They're just not moving them like they were before. And the inventory in Licking County is similar to what we're seeing in Franklin County, where the number of homes for sale is up. How much? Up 23% year over year. Look at the 2-year change, 70% more listings on the market right now. I live in Licking County. There are definitely more homes on the market. Look at the 5-year change, 144%. And again, if you're a buyer in Licking County, you're probably seeing more options out there. Prices haven't crashed by any means, but there are a lot more homes available, and that means more power for buyers, less leverage for sellers. Now let's look at one of the most expensive markets in our state, Delaware County. Home prices there up only 2%. Barely really growing at all. If you factor in the inflation, you're really just even, honestly. And 2-year growth only up 5%, 3-year growth 8%, very similar to Licking and Franklin County with price growth. Comment below, does that surprise you? And look at the change in active inventory in Delaware County. It's insane, up 53%, a ton of homes hitting the market there versus last year. And if you go back 4 years, you're up 92% in Delaware County. More and more inventory equals better and better deals for the buyers. But don't get it twisted. It doesn't mean you're going to get the deal of your dreams. Prices haven't completely collapsed by any means. It just means that the market is finally shifting. Comment below if you live in Delaware County. Are you seeing more homes? Are you seeing lower prices? Now let's head up north to Cuyahoga County, where home prices are up 5%, much stronger growth up north than in central Ohio. I'm noticing that as a trend. 2-year growth, 13%. If you go back 6 years, home prices now are 57% higher versus 6 years ago. And the growth looks like it's continuing. And a big reason why home price growth continues to move along in Cuyahoga County versus Franklin County, for instance, is the number of homes for sale. The growth of those is still relatively moderate. I mean, we're 1 year change, 22%, 2 year change, 31%. Look at that 3 year change, only 2%. 4 year change, 6%. So, and then there's actually a negative number in there, negative 40% if you go back 6 years. So in Cuyahoga County, you actually have right now, you have 40% fewer homes on the market versus 6 years ago. And that's vastly different than we've seen in Licking or Franklin County. All right, now let's head up north to Lucas County, the Toledo area. Home prices there up 5% year over year. So home prices are growing in the Toledo market. The 2 year change is up 11%. The 3 year change up 15%. Look at the 6 year change, 56%. Very similar to the Cuyahoga market. If you're a buyer in Lucas County, though, the inventory situation is pretty grim. 1 year change is only up 16%. So you only have 16% more homes on the market versus last year. Look at the 6 year change before COVID, down 35%. So you got 35% fewer homes on the market versus pre-COVID. So buyers in Lucas County probably don't have as much power as they do in Franklin or like Licking County. Now we're headed to Summit County, and I'm seeing prices up 3% year over year. So they're still up, but that growth is slowing definitely. Year 6, 53% growth. So in the last 6 years, home values have grown 53%. Look at that year 4 to year 5 change. 20% in that 1 year. The next year actually was 10%. So those 2 years wrecked a lot of markets throughout the country, certainly in Ohio. Like those 2 years added 30% to home prices. Comment below. What do you think of that? Are you surprised? Now let's look at the inventory in Summit County, which is basically the Akron area. You have inventory growth of 18% year over year. So you are adding homes for sale. But if I go back 6 years, look at that. Still down 37% before COVID. And that's the demarcation line that I'm seeing throughout the United States. If you have more homes for sale than right before COVID, you probably are seeing lower home prices. If you have fewer homes, you're probably seeing home prices continue to rise. But inventory in Summit County is growing, just not what we need to see for continued price softening, maybe even price decline. But if you live in Summit County, I'd like to hear from you. What's happening on the ground? Now let's head down to Cincinnati, where the 1 year change in home values up 2%, the 2 year change up 7%, that 6 year change up 55%, very similar to what we're seeing right now in Franklin County. Slower home price growth, not negative yet, but slower growth. Now, what about inventory? Well, that's up 1 year, 15%, 2 year up 70%. That's crazy. If you go back 6 years, you're still underneath pre-COVID levels. You're down 26% compared to 6 years ago, basically 2019. As you continue to add inventory in Hamilton County, no doubt you're going to see probably lower home prices, slower home price growth, maybe even negative home price growth in some pockets of Hamilton County. Now we look at Clermont County right next door, and prices there up just 3% year over year, up 7% in 2 years. I go back to year 6, I see 56% growth, similar to a lot of these counties we're going to look at today, where prices were in the 50s or even 60% growth over the last 6 years. But that number is coming down as home price growth slows. But if you live in the Cincinnati market, tell me what's happening. Now, one of the markets I have my eye on is Highland County. Home prices there are off the hook. Look at this. 1 year change, they're up 5%. Not a big deal. But look at the 6 year change, up 78% in Highland County. Nuts. What's happening with the inventory? Well, let's find out. Highland County, you're up only 4% year over year, but you've got 98% more homes on the market versus 2 years ago. You're still below pre-COVID levels, though, down 18% versus 2019. What about Warren County? Up 3%, 1 year change, 2 year change, 7%, 6 year change up 55%. Very similar to a lot of these other markets throughout the Buckeye State. Now let's look at inventory, see how that's tracking. Well, inventory's up a lot there, up 37% year over year. You're up 76% in the last 2 years with the number of homes on the market. If I go back 6 years though, still down 37% compared to pre-COVID. And regionally, I am seeing a trend play out where in the northern section of Ohio and the southern section, like in Cincinnati and the Cleveland area, I'm seeing lower inventory growth. But in the central area of the state, I'm seeing more inventory growth. Any idea why? Comment below. Let me know what you think. Now let's look at Montgomery County, the Dayton area. Home prices there up 4%, up 11% in 2 years. Look at year 6, up 63%. And it's very similar. I mean, from 2020 to 2021 in Montgomery County, it looks like home values went up about 20%. Then they actually went up about 15% the following year. So again, 35% in just 2 years. That's not sustainable. And obviously it's not, because now home prices are only growing 4%, which is historically kind of normal. Now let's check in on the inventory situation for Montgomery County. Well, we have 30% more homes versus last year. If you scroll down to 6 years, we are down still 14%. That trend is continuing. So we've looked at the major population centers of the state. Now let's look at where their home prices are falling the most and where they're rising the most. Looking at this map, pretty easy to tell. Jackson County prices are down 4% year over year. They were flat last year. Look at the 6-year growth, up 41%. So 41% may sound like a lot, but if you think back, these other counties have grown in home prices 50, 60, sometimes 70% in the last 6 years. So 41%, it's kind of on the lower end of the spectrum. Now let's look at inventory. What's happening there? Well, in an odd turn of events, they're actually only up 3% in the number of homes for sale. The 2-year change, 9%. Go back 6 years, they're still down versus COVID. So if you go back to 2019, they're still down 29%. So it's not a complete locked in science that if you have lower inventory versus pre-COVID, you're going to have obviously higher home prices. I mean, Jackson County has been down this year, flat last year in home prices, and they still haven't had a massive surge of inventory yet. But if you're in Jackson County, you know what's going on, let us know. The other county that stands out on this map is Harrison County, down 4% year over year, down 1% in 2 years, down 1% 3 years ago. Home prices there have kind of yo-yoed. My guess is there's just not a lot of transactions in the county. That'll cause that price to jump up and down a lot. But let's look at inventory and see if we can see any kind of causation. So active homes for sale, the number is up 6% year over year, and it's up 36% versus 2 years ago. But they're still down 31% versus before COVID. But again, I think it's just the number of transactions can kind of throw it off when it's a smaller population base and you don't have a ton of homes on the market. It's going to cause the prices and the inventory percentage increase or decrease to fluctuate quite a bit over time. But look at Putnam County, Ohio, where home prices are up 9% year over year. That's a lot, probably near the highest in the state as far as price growth goes. 2 years, they're up 14%, 6 years up 57%. But Putnam County for inventory is up 113% year over year, but there's just not a lot of transactions there probably. So because of that, those percentages can look extreme. Look at the 6-year change, still down 39% versus pre-COVID. But again, wouldn't get all caught up in those percentages because there's just not a lot of transactions. I mean, the same kind of story holds true if we look out Monroe County. Look at this inventory of homes for sale up 140% in 1 year. Man, it's been up triple digits every year until year 6. That's actually the lower number at 71% more homes. So it looks like there's a ton of inventory that continues to grow in Monroe County. If you know what's happening there, let us know. Now let's look at home prices there, see if there's anything we can find out at all. Now let's look at home prices, see if there's anything we can figure out from this information. Well, 1 year change in home price growth, 3%, 2 year change, 6%, 3 year change, 6%. Look at that 6 year change, 23%. Again, not a 60% growth like we've seen in other counties or even 50. It's kind of like moderate growth that we've seen historically in a lot of these counties throughout Ohio. But now let's look at Tuscarawas County. 1 year change in home value, 7%. 6 year change, 53%. Let's look at inventory. What's happening there with homes for sale? Well, It's down. That's right, down 10%. You have fewer homes on the market in Tuscarawas County than you did last year, the year before, and certainly pre-COVID, you have fewer homes than you did then. So inventory there does not look good. If you happen to live in Tuscarawas County, let me know what's happening. But there is a crisis that's brewing behind the scenes in the Ohio housing market, and it's one that you're not going to hear many people talk about. And that crisis is the age of Ohio homes, because folks, they're old. This graphic represents all the homes in the state, which is about 5.3 million houses. And I got this information from the US Census Bureau, and it breaks it down by when they were built. In other words, how old they are. For example, 1.7%, not even 2% of all the houses you see in the state were built in 2020 or later. In other words, about 91,000 homes were built after 2020. That's all. Does that surprise you? It surprised me when I pulled this data. I mean, if you're driving through the state, seems like there's a ton of housing developments, right? Like there's a housing development here, housing development there, new homes here, new homes there. But in reality, we are woefully undersupplied when it comes to new home construction. And you can see that 16% of all the homes were built between 2000 and 2019. Now, you may consider that a newer home if it was built in 2018 or 2019. Many people do. But nonetheless, the homes are not getting any younger. Now, from 1980 to 1999, Ohio built about 20% of their stock. Now, the lion's share of our stock, the majority of the houses you see out there in the state, were built between 1950 and 1979. And then if you look at the number of homes built before 1950 in the state, that's 24% of our inventory. Now, if you add all the homes that were built before 1979, it represents 63% of the houses in the entire state. In other words, over half of all the homes in the entire state, all the homes were built before 1979. Okay, well, what does that mean, Jason? Well, it means that there are a lot of old homes on the market probably. So why does this matter, Jason? Why should we care? Well, let me show you right now. By using Zillow, I can figure out how many homes are available in the entire state, which right now is a little over 20,000. In other words, 20,000 homes on the market today in the whole state of Ohio. It's pretty cool. You can do that on Zillow, right? Now, let's filter it for the year built. So if I want to find all the homes built after 1979, that's what I'm going to look at right now. That number drops from over 20,000 to 6,880. And that includes manufactured homes and condos, by the way. But what happens if I filter it for homes built before 1979? 13,423 homes. So the vast majority of homes in the state that are for sale right now are old homes. Let's dive a little deeper. You want to see something really scary? Check this out. Of all the homes for sale in the entire state, 20,000 plus homes, 7,853 were built before 1950. That's right, 1950. So almost half, dang near half, of all the inventory in the state right now is not just old, it's really old. Probably going to need maybe new roofs, foundation work, new wiring, maybe new plumbing, windows, sidings, the whole shebang. Six figures, 100,000, 200,000 in work easily sometimes. Let's keep going. The situation gets very, very grim. Look at this. Of all the homes in the state for sale right now, 6,700 were built before 1940. 4,600 built before 1920. 3,200 built before 1910. Are you surprised yet? Are you sitting down? Have you fallen over yet? That to me is insane. Basically meaning, hey, there's a good portion of the inventory that you're seeing out there in the numbers when you hear somebody like me talk about inventory growth, that is inventory that will need major work, not just cosmetic touch-ups, but it could need complete rehab. Are you surprised yet? I'm surprised when I look at this data. So the more the story is, when you hear someone talk about inventory growth, the number of homes for sale is exploding. You got to dissect what that inventory really looks like, because if it needs six figures in work, or it's an abandoned house, or it's burnout, well, chances are you're not really going to count that as real inventory, because nobody's going to be able to buy it hardly. Make no mistake, the housing stock's old and we need more new homes. So the next time you hear someone saying, hey, we have an explosion of inventory, We have way too many new homes on the market. The builders have overbuilt. You need to come back to some of this info and really look at the details to understand the reality, not just the graph. But will home prices continue to soften in the Buckeye State? I think they will if inventory continues to grow. And that's what you can look at in your little local market. If you're seeing inventory rise, chances are home prices could fall, inventory fall, chances are home prices will rise. I hope you learned something on today's video. And if you're thinking about buying, selling a house in Central Ohio or anywhere in the state for that matter, give me a call, shoot me an email. I'm happy to help in any way I can. Now, I am a licensed real estate agent and I'm a realtor in the state of Ohio. My brokerage is Kiger Realty. You can find all that information in the description below. I'm the Ohio Housing Nerd, and YouTube thinks you'll like this video right here.